just in case. Let's get rocking and rolling. Welcome, everybody, to Overtime with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa.
You got it right.
I nailed it.
Welcome.
I've been practicing. Thanks so much for joining us. This is our live call-in show and a Q&A session. So Coach Blue Robinson here, mental health therapist, a substance use disorder counselor. Who are you?
I am Marissa Robinson, and I am a certified recreational therapist.
And the athletic director.
Absolutely.
So today we got some interesting content to share. We're going to dive into the sentencing of Jodie Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, both of which we've talked a little bit about on this podcast here.
Yeah.
Specifically because we know them, we know one of the families, and some of the shenanigans that went down before all the craziness ensued. But we're going to share with you, the listeners, a little bit of the sentencing and the accountability factors if you believe that maybe this shows maybe a level of accountability, first on the mother's part regarding the abuse, the charges that they were found guilty of, and the Jodie Hildebrandt, who was a therapist working with the family. And I'll tell you, Marissa, every time I talk about this person, my freaking gut just turns, and I'm just like, as a mental health therapist, the Hippocratic oath, the Hippocratic oath, the do no harm type thing, right, kind of comes into play. And Lord have mercy, did this woman do some damage?
And from what it sounds like, she has been for years. And
which frustrates me so much, that under the banner of trying to convince people that what she was giving was help in a therapeutic level of care was torture. And a lot of this is for your information, so that when you're pursuing counseling or therapy, that you understand that if it comes from a place of suppression and harm, that you don't allow people like Jodie Hildebrandt to convince you that it's normal.
That's the difficult thing, is you go to a professional who is educated, who is licensed, who's registered with the state, because usually you don't know what to do. And you look to them as the professional, as the respected person to be able to give the feedback and the understanding and the teaching and the training. But that's not what happened here, sadly.
Yeah, and it's taken a national look because of the YouTube fame and fortune that came to the Franke family. And, with respect to the kids, we're just going to be talking about the mother and Jodie, who are the kind of the bulk of the story. Our kids are friends with some of the kids. And so we're not going to get into that. But I want to just put it out there. We're going to be talking a little bit about some sensitive stuff. So if you are prone to, maybe having your heart be broken towards listening to some of the abuse and some of the things that happened, you might want to skip this episode because we're going to be getting into a little bit of the recordings of the sentencing. Let's jump into thanking our Patreon subscribers. It's because of you that this podcast exists. And today, you will be following this episode of the Overtime. You're going to be receiving another monthly bonus episode as we continue to discuss the wounded child. So be on the lookout. They'll be posting later this afternoon. So awesome. Who can we thank for making this podcast possible?
Yes, we want to thank our super fans, Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Christy Case, Kel Lim, Faith Davis, Andrew Baird, and Dustin Weaver.
Thank you.
Thank you to our super fans. Then we want to thank our rookie level, Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, and Sione and Mary Anook. And our pro level, Justin Robbins, Gary Thurston, and Flo Grant. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
And our champion level, Shad and Freya Robinson. Thank you guys for all you do to help keep this podcast going. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon subscriber, please check out patreon.com/addicttoathlete and see if there's a tier that works for you. There's tiers as low as $2 a month. If you pay up front for any of them, you get I think it's 16% discount per year. And it really does help us keep this podcast going, and we appreciate it. And we are able to give back to you. So we have lots of bonus episodes and content on there just for our Patreon subscribers, as well as exclusive gear and swag that you guys get. So
absolutely. So check it out. That's a great way to support the podcast, at the same time giving back to you. That's why I love the Patreon program so much.
Also, if you're interested, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. We really appreciate it. It helps our podcast get out there if you can leave us a review.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just saw that we crossed over 400 episodes. We're increasing weekly. frankly. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, huh?
Doing good.
Pretty wild. And oh my gosh, we've got some great guests on the horizon. Just so you guys know, for the Addict to Athlete podcast, we've got some really strong guests this last couple of times that I think you guys will really enjoy listening to. So
Some new people that you guys have never heard of, and
Yep.
it's going to be really exciting content.
and kind of out of the box of some of the usual conversation we have too, which
Yeah.
is kind of a cool thing. So building relationships, I love it.
Something different.
Our website, addicttoathlete.org. If you jump on there, you can register right now for our upcoming team half marathon, the No One Left Behind. This is a half marathon that you do with a couple of your friends. Doesn't matter if it's 2 friends. It doesn't matter if it's 10 friends. You start together, you finish together.
Yep.
It's about the journey.
Yep, staying within 15 feet of each other, because just like in recovery, we can't do it alone. So this is an event to do with your team. So this is going to be June 15th in Spanish Fork, Utah. Go to our website. You can register for that. We also have an upcoming race, 5K in Arizona, Southern Arizona, coming up on tax day, April 15th, but there's also a virtual option. If you're interested in helping give back to our new Native American community in Southern Utah, that is
Southern
really...
Arizona.
Southern Arizona, that is really just conflicted with addiction and mental health issues. This is a great way to give back to them and be able to support the Native American community in our new chapter of Addict to Athlete in the San Lucie district of the Tohono O'odham tribe.
Yeah. So jump on there and let's register. A very unique Addict to Athlete shirt down there from the culture. It's going to be a beautiful run. So jump on there, register. We'd love to have you guys support wherever you are. Those virtual runs are super important because it shows the fact that you can really get into recovery anywhere. So kind of a cool thing. Let's jump into the discussion. Yesterday, you caught it before I did. I was pretty slammed yesterday. I didn't know this until this morning, but the courts of Southern Utah sentenced both Ruby Franke and Jodie Hildebrandt for the aggravated child abuse charges that started last August of 2023. Is that right?
Yes, I think they were arrested like August 29th or August
Right.
30th.
And we've talked a little bit about it through several episodes of One-on-One and Overtime, specifically talking about how to identify a horrible therapist, what constitutes, discipline versus what happened, with the crossing the bounds into child abuse. And the reason why I want to share this on a recovery-based podcast is because these things, this domestic violence and things of this nature, seem to kind of have these crossroads. And I love getting feedback from you, the listeners, on situations like this, because you will be the first line of defense when you see things like this. Many of you listening to this have been in counseling and therapy, and you'll be able to understand that, wait a minute, if you have a friend or relative or child that's going through, you'll be able to pick up on some of the situations, signs, and maybe symptoms if things aren't going well. Just because they have a license and they call themselves professional does not mean that they are a good match either. I mean, I say do your homework when you're choosing a counselor and therapist, one that works well with your family, but trust your gut as well.
And sometimes you won't know until you're going to a few sessions. And guess what? You have every right to say, this isn't a good fit, and find somewhere else to receive services.
Counselors and therapists should never advocate making choices for you, meaning like how you discipline your kids, how you base relationships in your family system, whether you should get divorced or stay together. These are things that they have no business kind of, spreading their opinions. They can give you advice on each path, obviously, and support you with whatever path you take. But these are very unique and individualized decisions that you have to make. We're first going to hear the sentencing of Ruby Franke, which is the mother. And I want to know, in the listeners, I want to know if you believe that her apology is sincere or if it's, I got my hand caught in the cookie jar syndrome. And then, of course, Jodie Hildebrandt, her response, because I have my own take on her. So hopefully we have figured out the audio issue when it comes to the call-in / multimedia. So we're going to go ahead and play this now.
What's the state's position regarding sentencing?
See if you can hear that.
Your Honor, the state...
Okay. That's
good.
I'll stand up. The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by Idaho Probation and Parole.
This is a state's
She
lawyer.
committed horrible acts of child abuse. From May to August in 2023, Ms. Franke and her business partner held her 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house where the children and the defendants were staying.
We call that a sign. Red flag.
The children were forced to do physical tasks, like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and wall sits or sitting against a wall without a chair or stool for hours at a time. They were also forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, at times without shoes or socks. They were forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours.
In southern Utah,
and
the
even
desert.
days at a time.
Southern Utah.
They
Over
were
100
beaten,
degrees.
and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Both children had extensive physical injuries from the abuse that required hospitalization when they were found. The injuries from the binding to the 12-year-old are particularly awful. In addition to physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused to the extent that each believed, to some degree, that they deserved what was being done to them.
That is ridiculous.
Had the
hard to
older of the
think.
children not had the courage to run away and ask a neighbor to call the police, heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived in that situation.
Sorry to stop that, but if you haven't heard the 911 call and are open to that, being able to hear it, it's heartbreaking. This elderly neighbor is in tears. I mean, it's awful.
After being caught, Ms. Franke has shown considerable remorse, as evidenced by agreeing to serve consecutive prison terms and being willing to cooperate with the state against Ms. Hildebrandt. However, given the severity of the abuse she inflicted, consecutive terms are appropriate in this case. As the court's aware, Section 76-3401 lays out factors the court takes into account in determining whether consecutive or concurrent sentences should be imposed. Those factors are the gravity and circumstances of the offense, the number of victims, and the history, character, and rehabilitative needs of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by adult probation and parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate. This is due to the severity of the abuse to both victims. It could be argued that Ms. Franke should receive a lesser sentence than Ms. Hildebrandt because of her remorse and willingness to cooperate with the state.
It could be argued, but it shouldn't
However,
be granted.
the Board of Pardons and Parole will have broad latitude and will be able to take those facts into account when it determines how long each of the co-defendants will remain incarcerated. In conclusion, we respectfully request that the court go along with what was agreed to in the plea agreement and is recommended by adult probation and parole and impose consecutive sentences.
Thank you. Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Winward?
Now, this is Ruby's
Thank you, Your Honor.
attorney.
Good morning. In my few comments this morning, and in the comments my client wishes to make in a few minutes,
Some of the
we
audio
are
is
not
bad, so
suggesting,
sorry.
nor are we asking that the court deviate from the stipulated sentence contained in the written plea agreement. I want the court to know that through introspection and reflection, Ruby Franke has become a serious student of her own actions. In the very early days of my involvement with Ruby, she was somewhat defensive, and she was still very much indoctrinated into a philosophy that was destructive. Fortunately, Ruby came to the stark realization of the errors in her thinking patterns and subsequent actions. To say that she was horrified by this realization would be to put it mildly. I have marveled at how quickly Ruby abandoned her defensive stance and moved toward her total acceptance of her actions and to her sentence today. So far, she has used her time in jail to unwrap the layers upon layers of deceit and deception foisted upon her over the last 4 years by an unscrupulous individual. Ruby realizes that she still has work to do in shedding those thinking errors and to reestablish a better and correct pattern of thinking and behavior. Ruby realizes that changing her thinking, reestablishing relationships, and healing are not simple or easy tasks. However, she is committed to doing that work. I would like the court to know that Ruby Franke is a delightful, respectful, and responsible person. She is open to feedback and addressing the consequences of her actions head on, and now ready to address your honor and accept your judgment.
So let's talk briefly about this lawyer's statement for a minute about her, at first being defensive because obviously you have to defend what you believe. Mm-hmm. And she believed that the information and the teachings and the principles that Jodie was teaching.
And what she was doing herself.
What she was doing herself. Because
right.
You have to understand that although this has been pretty heavy the last couple of years, our children have been in their home and had recognized and been the recipient of some of the verbal abuse given by Ruby. I think our daughter once recalled a time by which they were in a hot tub out at their house, just a bunch of teenage kids, and our daughter has a birthmark on her neck, and Ruby was accusing her of being a slut because it was a hickey. And when our daughter brought this to our attention, we were both like, who the F is this chick?
Like, who's this?
And she was portraying as though she was a professional counselor and therapist.
That's what she had told our daughter, and her son who told our daughter. So,
and it was that kind of stuff where it was very obvious that whoever this person was, she's psychotic. Because A, who just assumes that? B, who goes out there and starts criticizing your kid's friends?
Well, and it wasn't just that. There was another day where they were all in the hot tub and she came over, and our daughter wasn't there that time, got all the girls out. So this was, secondhand, got all the girls out and literally like publicly shamed them for the swimsuits.
For the swimsuits they were wearing.
And that they were wearing, and sent them home because of how dare they dress like that and dress so inappropriately. And I think you are not their parents. I mean, what in the world? And so then her son continues to do that as well. Because why? Which I was furious with the son, but recognizing...
Not knowing where it came from at the time.
Yeah, that's what he's been indoctrinated with. That's what he thought was how you treat people and what you do and what you say. And then the son all of a sudden wondering why and asking our daughter why people are mad at him and why he doesn't have friends.
See, and that's heartbreaking because he's being indoctrinated by this. And from what I've seen and what I've been privy to now, they're good kids. They're amazing kids.
Yeah.
And so like to hear the lawyer come up and be like, now she's kind of recognizing the error of her ways. Marissa, you and I mean, yeah, we're counselors and therapists, but we're also freaking human. Like there's no way I would ever feel comfortable treating my kids this way because that's what happened to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I remember being very nervous about having kids because I'm like, what if dads hurt kids? Because my dads hurt me. And so in my mind's eye, I'm like, wait a minute, if I do the opposite, maybe I can be a good dad. I don't have to yell. I don't have to hit and smack and
degrade and demean.
Restrain.
Yeah.
Those are classic relationships. And I know that some of the people out there that don't understand kind of look at it as being a folly in the church that's kind of predominant here. Come on. We don't teach child abuse. Unfortunately, that comes with any religion in any part of the world.
There's extremists
out there.
That doesn't mean that that's what the religion
But
supports.
At the end of the day, you have to have a relationship with your kids before you can hold them to any kind of rules. And the relationship in this situation was forced. So I look at what the lawyer just said about her being indoctrinated. I believe that's going to take years for her to unravel that. I also think that radical acceptance is a part of this, but it's heartbreaking because it's so damn avoidable. It was
and
avoidable.
mostly that she doesn't have any of that radical acceptance or understanding until she is locked up and has such serious allegations finally facing her. That's what's hard. And you'll hear as we move forward too in her apology how many people tried to talk to her and tried to tell her that this was inappropriate.
Yeah. So this now is Ruby Franke addressed the judge and the court.
Thank you, Judge Walton.
Thank you. Ms. Franke has a statement she'd like to make.
She does.
Judge Walt.
You don't have to bend down.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a statement without any intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely unchecked as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place.
Let's pause there for a second. That's kind of an interesting tell, right? That people in her family kind of started pointing this stuff out. And in family systems, this happens quite frequently. When a family member sees a problem within the system and they point it out, it's typically received with defensiveness. So it's like, hey, I'm noticing this. Well, this is how I raise my family. Keep your nose out of it.
Yeah.
But this happens in situations by which maybe you point out substance abuse, maybe you point out past abuse, all kinds of stuff. When you're met with a reactive response like this, there's a problem. So if you find yourself reacting to some of this stuff, when someone brings something up, they're saying that for a reason. They're not trying to piss you off. They're not trying to poke old wounds. They're trying to say, hey, we're noticing as bystanders some flies on the wall here.
And honestly, there probably are family members and people who would come to you and just point things out just to be mean. I think that's the exception more than the rule, number one. Number two, if it is multiple people, that is a big red flag that something's going on and they are being able to see something at a different perspective than you, and you better stop and take a step back.
Yeah, you let go of the ego, look at where it's coming from. Because so much of this could have been avoided if she would have listened to the people that really, truly loved her and loved her family.
Filled with cops who control hospitals
I'm gonna rewind
injure
that real
women who
quick.
challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place, filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abused.
Who need abused. I think they probably slipped that. So right now in our country, we have a huge division with people that don't trust government, that don't trust law enforcement, that don't trust courts, that don't trust hospitals, that don't trust clergy. You've got to be careful with that kind of mindset. This was a woman who was trying to isolate herself so much by which she had the knowledge that reigned supreme over everyone.
Yeah, but her and
anything
Jodie
else.
knew everything better than anyone else.
We've got to knock that stuff off. Now, there may be political things that I don't agree with, but I don't think that they're really trying to harm us. No one's coming to take your guns. No one's trying to govern your life. If you think they're tapping into your phones, you've got some narcissistic tendencies you need to deal with because they don't care. There's too many of us. But when you radicalize your mindset of the COVID conspiracy and vaccinations.
Well, and when you just make everything extremist, that it's every cop, that it is every clergy, there's no way. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere.
No, and that is dangerous. That's dangerous and borderline psychotic thinking, right? Because there are flip sides to all of that. Clergy that lie, all this kind of stuff. Now, these kind of things, when you get into that mindset where it's you against the world, you will always lose.
Yeah.
Always. And you may not be caught and put in jail or whatnot, but you will build a wall around yourself and you will not
separate yourself from people and friends and society. And that is dangerous. It's so dangerous. And that's such a good point, to be able to kind of assess where you're at and how you're looking at the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know where we were, Marissa. It seemed like this the other day where we were talking about vaccinations and it just kind of came up. We didn't bring it up, but it was like, I'm not getting another one of those and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of like, sorry, keep your opinion to yourself. I don't know. That kind of stuff drives me nuts. The fact of the matter is, when you get so rigid with it, you don't allow yourself the willingness to learn more. Yeah. It's like this. Years ago, I said, absolutely not. Medicated assisted therapy, treating addiction with medications, no way, not on my watch.
So bad.
And Bruce Chandler, my supervisor and mentor, said, Blue, just read about it. Do some research. And I thought, well, I'll give him that. Lo and behold, I had this thing called a change of perception, a change of mind, right? Yeah. And in the political world, you say, oh, he's a flip-flopper. No, he's not. They're getting educated. You're learning more.
I hope people are flip-floppers.
No
because
joke.
I hope they are open-minded enough to be educated, to learn, to have their mind and understanding and opinions mold and change with the way the world works, because that's the way the world works.
Absolutely.
That's called evolution. We're evolving. 100%. And if you can't do that, you're not evolving.
Exactly. And it's funny because when you look at it, you are the common denominator in everything. So if you're seeing negative stuff in law enforcement, in judicial, in church, in social, it's you. It's not all that. It's you. And so having a growth mindset means that you're willing to look behind the what is and get it a little bit deeper. So I wanted to pause on that just for a minute because she was indoctrinated that it was all bad. And the things that this marriage and family therapist, Jodie Hildebrandt, did to separate the marriage and family in the Franke family is irreprehensible. It is.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's awful.
My choice to believe and behave this paranoia culminated into criminal activity.
Paranoia.
For which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jodie Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from her or connections. Jodie was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her to be my mentor. It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police.
This is interesting.
Nick Hallman, Brian Palufo, Cy Pikuvit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, Dee Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective Jay Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom.
Interesting.
You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped heal my children. Jodie and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Thank you to DCFS, the Children's Justice Center, Judge Basil, and other key adults.
Judge Bazell.
You've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president Jim Nelson for reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney, Lamar Winward, and his staff.
So the other thing that you got to be very aware of is that Ruby Franke, the reason why this is so high profile is because she held a pretty prominent stance in the YouTube community with a couple million followers with her 8 Passengers channel.
Yeah.
Which kind of was a depiction of family life.
Well, and that's how to be a parent. And then it morphed into parenting life coach and then to this.
And so when she talks about like the public at large, like there were many people, and the thing is, I didn't watch them. It was kind of funny when we first moved to Springville. That's where the 8 Passengers is located, just again, a couple of houses away from us. I didn't know them, but our kids knew them. And they were very aware of them. And when all that started going down, they're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So lots of viewers, 2 million plus, started recognizing some of these patterns and some of these discrepancies in what was probably at the beginning a very loving and compassionate family. And with anything, when you're in a public eye like that, stuff starts to happen. One of the things that we've tried to do on Team Addict to Athlete, specifically with Marissa and I, because we're kind of the lead kind of public people here, is we've kept our kids out of the spotlight for the most part. Our daughter Savannah, who again was the participant in some of these things over here, she chose to put her voice out there with the Minor League podcast, 100% her decision.
Yeah.
And when it didn't work for her schedule, she doesn't record. And that was one of the reasons why those minor league podcasts were so sporadic. Our kids participate and they do those kind of things, but it's not a money-making scheme through them.
And it's not forced.
It's not forced. And in fact, it's a very strong, statement to let everyone know that during the crunch time of Addict to Athlete, our kids were all small. And as we started getting busier and growing more, I made a commitment to the family that if Addict to Athlete ever infringed on our family system, it would end immediately.
That they came first.
That they came first. And there were a couple times when we got very close because, we were moving, we had all kinds of situational things.
And we would sit down as a family and ask them, is this too much?
Is it too much?
Do we need to put Addict to Athlete on the back burner? What do you guys think? And gave them the choices.
Yeah. And there were some adjustments that were made because of that. Mm-hmm. So, I look at this and I think that's amazing. I'm glad that she's come into the understanding of this. And as she goes forward, and as we get into Jodie, she'll understand maybe why, because there's a very big difference between what Ruby's saying and what Jodie says.
I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question.
Guilty by association.
My mother-in-law, father-in-law, Kevin's family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and neighbors.
Who were the flies on the wall to
all saw
say
the warning
something's
signs
wrong.
long before I did, and you did what you could. You wanted to help, but I pushed you away. My mother and father, I have been utterly wretched to you. you have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt. My siblings...
Well, we have to understand why, too. Everything you're doing becomes kind of problematic to a functional family. Mm-hmm. You can see why she would be defensive. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because you don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know better than you.
Yeah.
It takes an incredible amount of humility to recognize this. And I hope that what she's saying is genuine. We'll see. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
And yeah, the future will tell.
The future will tell.
You know?
But that's a big step forward to be able to rationalize and look at those relationships and be like, I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Your spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I've dragged your families through the mud in public. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin, my husband of more than 23 years, you are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. And you are wrapped around my heart in a knot I'll never be able to undo. To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you are part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now that over the past 4 years I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger.
You had a little bit to say about this part.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting and also just those are the first words that she chose. You know, my babies,
to address
my little
children.
Chicks, the ones I usher to safety. I don't know. And obviously I don't know what I would do in this situation and being able to apologize like she's doing. But I think first and foremost, you need to say, I am sorry to my children. First words out of your mouth. I don't think you should talk about safety and what you've done to take care of them first.
Right. And
then about how Jodie ruined it for you, and then you chose to follow for the last 4 years. But some of her followers years before Jodie posted and tried to bring things about, tried to change things.
Yeah.
In fact, I need to look it up. There's a change.org petition to get their channel off years ago. And I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it is before Jodie came about. And that's part of the problem. This was already on a bad route, and that's frustrating. Let's see.
Well, the interesting thing too about
this started May 2020, so I don't know, around this time. But I know things happened even before that, before somebody got to the point of like, get this off the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting about being accountable to your children and allowing your, I guess, ego again to be put in check and apologizing to your children is one of the most sacred, powerful relationship buildings you could ever do. You know, and I've talked about this on the podcast when I've kind of messed up as a dad, and with Boston when he was a little guy, and I'd tease him about the girl toys coming on TV, and I had to apologize to him again, Boston, when we left him at church. Right? Seems like I'm always apologizing to Boston. But it's one of those things where it's a beautiful thing to be able to say, you know what, man, I screwed up. I said some stuff, or I did some things, or I overlooked.
And I know that's
sorry.
It's so difficult. As you as a parent, you also put yourself in a situation and a platform thinking, I should know better, I should do better. And so when that's questioned or that's put into attack at all, then it's just like, okay, you become defensive. It's easy to become prideful and think I'm fine, okay, I'm okay. But to be able to really lower that pride and say, I'm sorry and I messed up is huge. And like you said, very, very sacred.
The residual effects of that are when our kids do wacky, dumb things, guess what they do? Like they'll yell and hoot and holler and try to, defend their stance, but eventually they come around, they're like, hey, I overstepped some boundaries there, I'm sorry. One of the most amazing things. Why? Because we did it to them too. So you're right. I wish you would have just kind of come out of the gate and been like, even by each their name. She named a lot of other people, and I don't know why she didn't probably give their names out in public.
But those are the most important of this whole case. This whole case is about those kids. And there's not a huge focus on that in this apology.
Absolutely.
Went into darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented that I believed dark was light and light was wrong.
Her audio
I will
hurts
do
messed up.
anything in this world for you.
We'll stop it there. And they go on to go ahead and give her the sentence. But I hope that she's being sincere. It sounds like it. But
I've never heard anyone do anything like this.
Me
I
either.
watch a lot of crime and true crime and court hearings, and I've never heard that. And so I really appreciate how honest and open she is in that, and taking accountability and saying, I'm open to whatever the prison sentence is. But I also think, is this just in preparation for, because in Utah, the judge won't give all of her sentence. It goes to the
Probation.
Board of Pardons. And she will present to the Board of Pardons in years to come on when she can be released. And is that just a preemptive strike? Probably. Pretty smart to do. It seems honest. I think I'm pretty good at assessing, but it's sad to me that this honesty and this accountability came after she was arrested and now is facing up to 30 years behind bars.
Exactly.
That's frustrating.
And the thing that will go on behind, jail cell doors and closed doors between her and her family are personal to them. And I know that there's one amazing thing that happens in situations like this is if accountability is presented, such as what she's done, and she does it here at a public situation here in court, that she'll do that privately with her own children. And so as much as all of us want to see her spend decades behind bars, that's not up to us. I mean, the damage has been done, but there's a beautiful, I guess, part of all this too, that kids forgive. And I know that's what I wanted from my mother, was just that simple apology, like, hey, I put you through hell. I am so
Just
sorry
that
for that.
acknowledgement of what
Never happened in my mind. So
because
I get
I
it.
think that pride just wants to think, well, it's not my fault, or I didn't, or look at my situation and I've been through, like she says, I was pulled down in the darkness and pulled into the undercurrent, rather than just, I messed up. I should have known better. Yes, I was influenced by somebody and I shouldn't have followed, but just straight out, I screwed up.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be the ruin end all of everything. And there's so many parents, like we've used to own our own treatment center, and there's a lot of family therapy going on, and you've done a lot of family therapy over the years, and it's crazy how many parents cannot do that.
It's
just
mind-boggling.
Say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
I think it's because, again, there's this persona that, they're right and you're wrong. And there's
I'm big, you're
pride.
little.
There's a pride
Matilda
factor. And then that idea that your contributions to the situation causes the pain, it's hard for them to wrap their heads around, because they feel guilty and they feel sad and they know what they've done is wrong. And when you admit that,
I'm sure it's a protective thing.
It's,
right?
it's a self-preservation type situation. But when you admit that, that means that you did some wrong there. Although Ruby didn't do everything, she has stewardship in it.
Exactly.
And I think if we can just own our stewardship, not say you have to take accountability for all of it, because one could be saying, all right, well, where's the husband here? He should have been stepping up to all the other
and
stuff.
people are saying it, like, why isn't he being charged? And
none of that is any of our business. It's their situation. But the beautiful part about this is that redeeming quality of, like, now it's all the cat's out of the bag. Now comes the healing process. And I think that'll be something, and unfortunately, we won't see that. We get to see all the sensational stuff. We don't get to see that, but I have enough faith in human beings to say that they're on that path, right?
Yeah.
So let's now just jump over to the therapist of all this. This is Jodie Hildebrandt. She was the one that was kind of the instrument in, I would say, introducing these radicalized, I guess, approaches with a long history of screwing things up, losing her license to the state of Utah to practice for a while, doing some pretty crazy things.
And getting it back.
But it sounds like this might be the nail in the coffin for her. So,
and were hidden when people came to visit the house. They were forced to do physical tasks like carrying loaded
it's the
boxes
same
up
thing
and
that the state
downstairs
attorney said to
and
Ruby.
wall
So
sits or sitting against a wall.
we're going to start.
They each believed to some degree that they deserved what was being done to them.
That's a hard one to swallow.
Had the older of the two children not had the courage to run away, in telephone conversations that will be provided in full to the Board of Pardons and Parole,
And I'm curious to hear these.
and which she knew to be recorded, she's repeatedly claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators.
Ridiculous.
She has gone so far as to say that the things said in this proceeding and covered by the media today will be full of lies. The combination of three factors make Ms. Hildebrandt a significant threat to the community. First, the severity of the abuse she caused to be inflicted on young children. Second, her attitude that everything she did was justified and that she is being wrongfully imprisoned. And third, her training as a therapist and aptitude for using online resources to convince others to follow her guidance.
Ridiculous.
Utah Code Section 76-3401 lays out 3 factors the court should consider in determining whether to impose concurrent or consecutive sentences. The first is the gravity and circumstances of the offense.
As a therapist, if you are taking the stance and defending what is blatantly obvious, you have problems. That tells me that this stuff has happened for years in many of the situations that she's got away with, simply because she spoke louder and she's got a license on her wall and she's a professional. Man, what a nightmare.
Yeah.
The second is the number of victims, and the third is the history, character, and rehabilitative need of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by adult probation and parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate here. This is due to the severity of the abuse to the 2 victims and the extreme need for Ms. Hildebrandt to be rehabilitated so that she no longer will present a risk to the community. The state respectfully requests that she be sentenced to 4 consecutive terms.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Your Honor. I will be brief. As is always the case in cases that come before courts, there are 2 sides to every case. And even in a case like this, that remains the case. There are many allegations regarding these 2 individuals, Ms. Franke and my client, Ms. Hildebrandt. The only facts in this case that are adjudicated facts are those set forth in the plea agreement that she entered into freely and knowingly and voluntarily. Those facts, those adjudicated facts, are significant. They certainly provide a basis for the pleas and provide a basis for the stipulated sentence in this case. My experience with Ms. Hildebrandt is that she is not the person that she has been portrayed to be.
So that is a classic lawyer statement.
He's a defense attorney.
Exactly.
He has to say something, right?
Exactly.
He's being paid to say.
There is a long list of people that she has hurt under the banner of therapy.
Yeah. And a professional, and educated and licensed, which makes things so much more serious.
Absolutely. Which is why I think she will be held accountable to the higher degree even than, Ruby the mother, because she should freaking know better.
Absolutely.
And so it's hard not to really just want to tear into that.
But having said that, she has accepted responsibility in this case.
And you'll see that she really hasn't.
Into this plea agreement with a stipulated
I don't think she can believe she got caught.
4 consecutive
I think she's stunned that she got caught.
sentences. She did that at the time she entered into the plea agreement, knowing that that would be the court's order. She's before the court today, knowing that that will be the court's order, and she fully accepts that. She accepts responsibility, and she accepts the consequences for her conduct. And we will submit it to the court on the stipulated agreement.
Mr. Terry, you suggested that there are 2 sides to every case. I generally agree
The judge.
with you. Mm-hmm. Ms. Hildebrandt didn't make a statement to AP&P in the course of the pre-sentence investigation report.
Correct.
Why did she not make a statement?
She wanted to reserve her right to make a statement before the court today, and she has a brief statement that she wants to read.
Now listen to the difference between
And
Ruby and Jodie.
Ms. Hildebrandt? Go ahead.
I sincerely love these children.
That right
First
there,
sentence that
the
should have
First
stopped.
sentence.
Oh my gosh.
I sincerely love these children that she bound, that she abused, that she forced labor,
Refused giving food, water,
aid, medical attention. I love these children, as evidenced by what? That right there, that statement right there, I would have cut her mic and been like, you're done.
I know.
That is ridiculous.
So-
But see, here's the thing. She believes her own lies. She's been teaching this for so long that she believes her own garbage. Does that make sense? She believes it.
I would love to know a little more about her history. And
I'm sure there'll be a Netflix documentary.
I'm guessing she was married, guessing she was a parent. What's her relationship with her spouse, her children?
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine.
I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons
I desire for them to heal mentally and physically. The wounds that you inflicted.
Yeah.
That's like the Sackler family creating a medication that kills people called OxyContin and then being responsible for
lying about it.
Yeah, and then saying, well, we're going to make some medicated assisted therapy medication because now we can double slam them, right?
That's what they're doing.
Like, good grief.
did not go to trial, so I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience.
She didn't want to go to trial, and so she took the plea agreement to not go to trial because she didn't want the kids to be exposed back to the suffering. You know what it really is? She didn't want to be held accountable to those kids that would go there and sit on the stand and point at her and say, you did this. These scars on my body, you inflicted. It had nothing to do with her not wanting to put the kids through any more emotional trauma because that would have been a liberation for them. They could have faced their abuser and been able to say, you did this. And yeah, it would have been emotional, but would also have created within them probably a very strong sense that you don't get to treat us like garbage and
really
abuse
empowering.
And get away with it.
Yeah.
So as much as she thinks that she's like giving them the grace, it's not.
One of the reasons I did not go to trial is that I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience which would have been detrimental to them.
Nice try.
My hope and prayer is that they will heal and move forward to have beautiful lives. I am willing to submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make retribution as an outcome.
And in answer to your question, Your Honor,
short and sweet.
I knew that whatever she might say to the author of the pre-sentence report would probably sound hollow and self-serving, and perhaps
as it is
today.
That's probably the loudest thing that was said.
But I know that my client, in the statement that she makes to the court today, that statement is absolutely sincere.
Yeah, that she still didn't take any responsibility.
Does Hildebrandt recognize that it's her behavior that caused the harm to the children that she's referred to in her statement?
I'm going to start that over.
Recognize
the judge
that
gets
it's her behavior that caused the harm to the children that she's referred to in her statement?
Your Honor, she recognizes that she was, along with Miss Franke, that she made decisions with respect to the discipline of those children that were wrong, that caused harm to those children. She fully recognizes that and accepts responsibility for that.
Well, she would have said that.
All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I like what the judge says here, too.
Ms. Hildebrandt, this circumstance is tragic. It's largely, of course, of your making. By any measure, your conduct in this case was disastrous for these children. Adults are supposed to protect children. Adults with specialized training in particular are supposed to protect children.
Thank you.
You didn't do that in this case. In this case, you terrorized children, and the results have been tragic.
He's taken back.
What happened to these children and your philosophy in dealing with them frankly seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. And the court finds that it is appropriate that you serve a prison sentence. The court finds under the statute, Utah Code 76-3-401, that given the gravity and circumstances of the offenses, the number of victims, and the history and character and needs of the defendant, that consecutive sentences are appropriate. The court imposes 4 1 to 15-year sentences to be again served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The last thing I do need to tell you is that you only have 30 days to file or perfect.
So Man, what a difference, you know. And
So-
obviously, could they both be pulling wool over our eyes? Absolutely. At this point now, the system has done its job. We get to bow out gracefully while the family still has to recover and heal. It's a tragedy, and it's a heartbreaking situation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's horrible.
And the reason why we wanted to play this wasn't just because we have a little bit of personal insight. More so, it's about being able to own your own mistakes, to really kind of allow yourself the ability to learn from mistakes. And that accountability factor is huge. And it's gut-wrenching to know that because, Hildebrandt here, under the banner of being a mental health therapist,
Yeah.
the damage that she does to our profession is pretty great.
Yeah.
Because,
Again, it's one of these, just a really bad seed in a huge group of really good therapists that now will taint other people to go, oh, I don't want to go to a therapist because look, they're going to be like this and they'll give me the wrong,
Absolutely.
advice. It's horrendous.
That's why you got to remember that your therapist
Works for you.
Works for you. You don't work for them. I hope maybe just a little line that you'll think of when you're pursuing any kind of counseling, because mental health and stuff is so important. So it's a heartbreaking situation. We wanted to share that with you just again because of the differences of just the accountability and the mechanism of kind of what creates the sour attitude towards life in and of itself if it's not done with the right perspective, the right team, to keep a growth mindset, an open heart, and to learn how to love and learn how to be loved. I mean, those are big parts.
Absolutely.
I love those children. She said that is the most heinous thing.
Mostly when that's the first thing out of her mouth. It's
Man, that's that classic conditioning where you're abusing your spouse, your children, and you say, I'm only doing this because I love you. That is sick.
Yeah.
It's sick.
Well, and that's why you listen to all of Ruby's and it sounds so different. It sounds like it's coming from a place of love and empathy and acceptance and accountability and all these good places. But the whole section that was about her kids just
It fell short.
fell very short. And that's where I think, how much of this is real?
Jodie can't believe she got caught. And that's the biggest thing. I can tell because just the way that she's like trying to skirt around the bigger issue, which tells me that she's done this for years.
When you find things like that, then that's usually the case. Is obviously she's been doing this for years and has gotten out of it every time, which we know of certain cases. I mean, she did have her license taken away and stripped from her and then given back.
But that's why
those are scenarios that just create the perfect storm to create a narcissist.
But that's why DOPL exists. DOPL is the state of Utah's licensing division.
Of Professional Licensing.
And they're a great organization because they have their finger on the pulse of anyone that's put in positions of authority. And you study, you go to school, you do all these things, you put your career out there, and they are the gatekeepers of if you're being on the up and up. You can get on DOPL's website and search licensing. You can do all of these things. You can see if there's been any discipline in the past. And it's important. And when DOPL does an investigation on somebody, they do it pretty thorough. And if you make amends and you're doing what's right, even if you do something wacky and your license is suspended, they help you get on the right track and they monitor you. And so she was given a second chance and look what she did with it.
Yeah.
So heartbreaking situation. But, listeners, wanted to share that with you, just kind of put a capstone kind of on everything that we've talked about with this case. Our hearts go out to the families involved and
Thank you
hope
all
that
for
time
listening.
will heal those wounds. So continue. This will be, again, dropped as a podcast. If you want to share it with anybody, please do so. Jump on, leave us a review. I think that the last thing that should be said here is no matter how bad things get, you got a team behind you. You don't have to do this alone because you can help turn that mess of yours into a very powerful, powerful message.